During my 34 male conscious life, I've noticed that my older brother, Jack, 36 male, has always been the golden child. He always got more. They took him on more vacations, while I was left with my grandparents, which was nice. I loved them. They always took more expensive things from him. When I was 18, I got my driver's license. My brother took it 3 years ago when he was 18, and my parents immediately bought him a car. And from the more expensive ones. When my 18th birthday came and my parents agreed to buy me a car, Jack decided that his was old and wanted a new one. So they got a new one for him, sold the old one, and told me, sorry, his car was old, we'll buy it for you one day. This was the last straw, and I moved out. I was staying with a friend before I could rent my own apartment. At the time, I was working full-time and attending college that my parents did not pay for. Ever since I graduated, I was hired at a nice company in my hometown that pays really well. Jack, on the other side, dropped out of university because of a drinking problem he had. He jumped from one job to another and finally landed a full-time position that pays less than mine does. I helped my parents with the bills, mortgage, etc. My brother did not because he barely made the two ends meet for himself. Without my knowledge, 6 months later he had re-enrolled in university, and when he graduated 5 years ago, he started a job that pays a lot more than mine. I do not envy him. I'm happy for him, even though our relationship has not always been wonderful. Around that time, my parents invited me to a family dinner. There I was told that my brother had started a good job, and I congratulated him. Dinner passed, and I left. Later in the evening, my father called and said that since my brother was making more money, my services were not needed, and they were proud that at least one of their sons had succeeded in life. I was devastated, but I didn't answer. I just fell silent and hung up. They didn't call again. That was 3 years ago. Not until a week ago, when they called anxiously and asked me to pay the bills because their electricity had been cut off. No, how are you? It's been a long time, or even a sorry. Just straightforward. I asked why didn't their successful son pay them. Then I was told that he had been terminated because of alcohol use in the workplace and wasn't able to find a new job. I laughed, told them that they had lost the right to my help the moment they told me that they didn't need my services, and it was if I was the family's disappointment. They begged, but I shut them up. Since then, I've received messages and calls from them, my brother, and other relatives. Only my grandparents, with whom I stayed as a child while my parents went on vacation, stood by my side, knowing how my parents behaved. Am I the a-hole for refusing to help my parents? Not the a-hole. Services are no longer needed, much like their electricity. Sorry, bad joke, but seriously, their selfishness is mind-blowing. You would think they would at least apologize before trying to take your money. Not the a-hole. A parent's relationship with their adult child is a direct reflection of their parenting choices. You owe these people nothing. My view is that parents do the golden child a great disservice, as the golden child doesn't get to learn valuable skills. I've read so many accounts where the scapegoat has a golden child sibling who has addiction issues and/or never reached their full potential. Your brother had the same crappy parents you did, and ultimately they treated him just as badly. Not the a-hole. With the favoritism for your brother, they have failed and neglected your needs. If they needed help, they should show you why they deserve the help, and yet they still failed to show an unbiased perspective towards you. You may want to consider your relationship with them. Mother-in-law considers herself a traditional 1950s housewife. To me, that is debatable. She loves to cook, is extremely vain. Her and father-in-law fill gender roles pretty naturally, but she is also outspoken, demanding, and pretty much said that she would only babysit my child if someone was in the hospital. My boyfriend and I have been together for 7 years, and just aren't interested in marriage. This drives mother-in-law up the wall. She constantly devalues our relationship. She's told my boyfriend that she doesn't have to do certain things, like get me a Christmas stocking, give me her recipes, etc., because we are not married. To me, that is just outdated BS. She's even said I must want my big princess wedding, and what is wrong with me? Despite all of this, mother-in-law is not religious or conservative at all. She also had a marriage before father-in-law which lasted 9 months, and sounds like an absolute crap show. Mother-in-law was very much raised that you marry the man with the right last name and the right family, and then do whatever on the side. So she married some dude in their circle, was making out with father-in-law in a hotel room and crying before the wedding, and at some point after the wedding, father-in-law poured wine on her wedding gown. They cheated on each other for the entire marriage. She spent the wedding night sobbing because father-in-law broke up with her, and then she didn't even make it a year and dumped the rich dude in public and just took off running. Now, I do know some more about her life. Mother was an addict, and that had to be covered up. Rich dad was a textbook narc. She was the golden child, and the way he looks at her is creepy as hell. I could have sympathy if she didn't pearl clutch me not getting married. Recently we saw them for dinner, and mother-in-law overheard us bickering, which was embarrassing, and I didn't mean for her to hear that. Mother-in-law said we seem so miserable and we should just break up. It isn't as if we're married. We have a kid. Mother-in-law then says she worries about both of us because we never went through that honeymoon, just can't wait to be married state. Now, I know every couple is different, but her and father-in-law are really gross. Imagine hormonal teens and then they just never grow out of it. I snapped at her that I don't need to hear about marriage from a woman who clearly has no respect for marriage. Hence her marriage that lasted 9 months, and her sucking face with her lover in the hall at the wedding. Mother-in-law didn't seem too upset, and was just like, wow, you're original, like I've never heard that one before. The next day she sent me a pissy text saying I'm kind of a bee for holding the worst thing she ever did against her 30 plus years later, and she's mad I said she didn't respect marriage, because her husband is her life. Everyone sucks here. Her for all of her snarky comments, you for dragging 30-year-old drama up, and your partner for not shutting this down. Sounds like a toxic mix from all angles. Everyone sucks here. She is an a-hole for obvious reasons, but you crossed the line there. And where's your boyfriend in all of this? He needs to set some serious boundaries with his mother for the sake of your long-term relationship. Everyone sucks here. I think it goes without saying you're pretty much always an a-hole if you use someone's past mistakes against them to try and hit them with a low blow in a debate or argument. I think if you're really secure in how you're doing things, you just let it go in one ear and out the other. There's no need to try and be cruel just because some old bat is stuck in her 1950s mindset wants you to get married. I only say she sucks because she's being so snarky and dramatic. My father threw me out of the house at 15 for coming out as gay. I'm now 21 and happily married to the boyfriend I wanted to introduce to him when I was 15. On my wedding day, my father had an invitation to his wedding day hand-delivered to me by one of those hired delivery people. I don't know what they're called. His wedding date? My anniversary of when I started dating my husband. Both dates he knew because of my uncle. Not an a-hole, just sent a message to the wrong person. I threw the invitation away and didn't even think about it until my aunt, his sister, reached out and told me he wanted to talk and apologize for everything, and that he wanted me to be at his wedding. I told her that I'd consider it and talk to my husband about it. He's the one who convinced me to go and said we should just see what he says. We drove down a day early and my father basically avoided us all day. I know weddings are a busy time, but every time one of us tried to speak to him, he had to go somewhere, and then he said he'd talk to me after the wedding. The problem with this was that their reception wasn't supposed to end until 2, and they had a flight for 3:30 to their honeymoon, so I knew he wouldn't be able to talk to me then, and me and my husband were going to leave the reception as soon as was appropriate, to go around our hometown to places we haunted in high school when we first started dating. Because my father's wedding was held in the morning, we thought we could celebrate our anniversary in the afternoon and evening. I informed him of this, and he said that he would just call me when he could then. That's when I realized none of his fiancé's family or his fiancé had any idea that he had thrown me out, and that he had told them I moved away for college. I gathered this through talking to his fiancé and his family. I objected because I realized that this man was in love with my father, but my father had lied to him and felt like he deserved to know before they got married. I objected because I realized that this man was in love with my father, but my father had lied to him, and I felt like he deserved to know before they got married. I apologized, and then explained the situation, and then left. A lot of my family members said I was an a-hole, and that I could have waited until they got married, but I don't think the fiancé deserves to marry someone who lied about something so big. Edit. I objected before the ceremony started. The morning of the wedding when the fiancé asked me about college, I was like, I've never been to college. That's when I realized what my father had done. So I told her at breakfast before we had even left for the venue. Edit 2. Just to answer some questions and clarify. My father sent his wedding invitation to my wedding, my actual wedding. The anniversary that his wedding date is on was the date I started dating my husband. My uncle was asking if we had picked a date because we were going back and forth between 2 dates, and he and his family were the only ones coming from out of town. He asked my father instead of me. The 2 dates were the anniversary of when we had started dating, and the anniversary of when I said I love you for the first time. Cheesy, I know, deal with me. My father knew the significance of the dates because of the way my uncle worded his message. The other 2 languages I speak are French and Italian. I'd never met the fiancé nor his family until the day before the wedding, and only briefly. I didn't really sit down and talk to any of them until the morning of the ceremony. I only heard the fallout through my aunt because I left with my husband, but apparently my father and his ex-fiancée got into a massive argument, and the wedding was called off. I don't speak to either parties now, though I did message the fiancé on Facebook to apologize later that day, cause I felt bad about ruining his wedding, but he said he was glad that I told him. Not the a-hole. He built his relationship on lies. He could have told his fiancée about what he had done, and used it as a growth moment that might have actually made his relationship stronger. Instead, he chose to build it on hurtful lies, and decided to have his wedding on your anniversary. That was totally intentional, and I don't feel his intentions were kind, loving ones. Dude, way to bury the lead. Your gay father threw you out for being gay. Holy smokes. Not the a-hole. Go live your life away from this person who clearly had not come to terms with who he really was, and took it out on you at 15. What a jerk. He owes you so much more than an apology, which does not seem like he's really ready to do anyway. Not the a-hole. What seals the deal for me is that your father clearly was attempting to use you as a prop. You only came because your aunt said he was going to apologize for his past actions, but then he ducked you all day and was going to bounce out of your life again. His fiancée needed to know what he was getting into. Ha. So, I'm 26 female, from India, and I moved to the US around 7 years ago so I could study here. While staying here, I met my now boyfriend, Dave, 28 male, and we've been dating for almost 3 years. I'm pretty close with his family, and they've all seemed to accept me and my culture, and they occasionally even ask me to cook Indian food for them, which I gladly do. Because of virus, we hadn't been able to fly over to India, and since my mom has a medical condition, she prefers to stay at home. So my boyfriend Nora's parents have met mine. Despite that they video called before, and my parents seem to like him, and my parents stated that they are happy if I'm happy. My sister decided to get married in January, and I honestly couldn't miss it for the world, so I decided to ask my in-laws to join too, and they gladly accepted. Until we got to my parents' place, and I asked them what they will be wearing for the wedding. My family had stated before that they will require them to wear traditional Indian clothes, and for me to figure out how I'm going to do that. Which sucks, but I also understand where they come from, since it's our culture. My in-laws went on to show me what they would be wearing, which were honestly just plain dresses, and my father-in-law even said he'd be wearing jeans, which honestly shocked me. I asked them if I could change their mind, and took them to some shops to show them what auctions there are, and that my parents would pay for it without any problem. But they refused, and said that they wouldn't feel comfortable wearing any of that. I at least asked my father-in-law if I could buy a regular suit for him, but he adamantly refused. I just left it for what it was, because I didn't want to make a big deal out of it. During the wedding, I could see them getting weird stares from guests and family members, and I occasionally heard my mother-in-law and sister-in-law make fun of what my family was wearing, and they even made some comments about how the food smells, which just made me so annoyed. I walked up to them and told them that I'm embarrassed by them, and that I expect them to behave like adults and respect my culture, and if they wouldn't be able to do so, then they would be free to leave. My sister-in-law and mother-in-law were really mad at me for this, and told me they expected better of me, and even father-in-law got mad at me for talking to the girls like that. They rudely left, and they've been giving me the cold shoulder ever since, and even want a hotel and aren't staying with us anymore. My boyfriend has been taking my side in all of this, and has been trying to mediate. So Reddit, am I the a-hole? Edit 1. Wanted to add that when I told my parents that my in-laws would be joining us, they told me immediately about the Indian dress code, and I immediately relayed that information back to my in-laws. They never objected to it, or told me that they wouldn't, and they gave me the okay before booking the tickets, which my family even partly paid. When in India, I wanted to check in with clothes, and after they showed me, I took them to the shops. I even showed them Indian dresses, which are not two pieces, but they didn't want to. I asked them in private why they didn't want to wear it, and I never got the reason. Afterwards, I told my parents about this, and they were disappointed but understood that it must have been very overwhelming for them. Not the a-hole. They were being incredibly disrespectful, and you let them know how you feel. Can't imagine why adults would act like that. Not the a-hole, for miles and miles. If your in-laws didn't want to abide to your family's cultural rules, they had the option to not attend the damn wedding. The moment they went to the celebration with regular Western clothing, they should know they were up to all locals' judgment. Being angry at you is nothing but a tantrum they're throwing, because they wanted to insert themselves only in the part of your culture that catches their interest. As I said, if they don't want to do something, then they have to respect your family's culture and stay away when prompted. By the way, your man is golden. Thumbs up for him. Not the a-hole. They wouldn't have dressed that way for a black tie wedding, so there was no reason for them to be so disrespectful of the dress code for your sister's wedding. The running commentary was equally wrong, and you were justified in telling them to behave. Unfortunately, you can probably expect more of this should you marry your boyfriend.